Hello lovelies, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is DK Onyi. In this video I want to show you how I made my shirt. You can see how beautiful it looks. So we're going to first off draft the back piece of my shirt. So my fabric unfold is my hips divided by 4 plus 2. You can see that the fabric is unfold. So watch the way I am going to place my tape. My hips is 37 divided by 4 plus 2. That is my fabric unfold. I'm just going to show you. That is 9.25 plus 2 inches. That is going to be our fabric unfold. So after that, I'm just going to create a top line of 2 inches. Going to create a top line of 2 inches. With time you're going to know why I'm making use of 2 inches as the top line for the back piece of my shirt. So I use my ruler to rule it out, as you can see. So that's going to serve as our top line. So from there I'm going to place my shirt length. My shirt length is 28 inches. I'm just going to place it all across my fabric and use my ruler to make the markings visible. After that, I imputed my shoulder to half length, which is 16.75 inches. Then I use my ruler to make the markings clear. So we have the shoulder to the waist and shoulder to the shirt length. I'm going to impute my shoulder 15 inches divided by 2. I have 7.5, as you can see. So then I'm going to mark 1 inch for my shoulder slant, as you can see. Then after that I'm going to mark out my chest line, which is my bust divided by 6 plus 1.5, which gave me 7.1, as you can see. So I'm just going to measure that shoulder 7.5, as you can see, and place it on that chest line mark I made, as you can see. Then use my ruler to make the markings visible, as you can see. Then just rule out my chest line. Make sure that your ruler is straight. So after that I'm just going to mark out my neckline. Since the standard neckline is 3 inches, but since I'm on the slim side, I made use of 2.5 for the width, and for the depth I made use of 1 inch. So I'm just cross checking it to create my box. I use my armhole curve to create my curve, as you can see. Then use my hand to make it visible. So I'm just going to rule out my shoulder slants. So after that, on the chest line, I'm going to impute my bust measurements divided by 4. My bust is 34 divided by 4. I have 8.5 inches, as you can see. Then after that, I am going to add 1.5 inches for my ease allowance. Remember, we're making a shirt. A shirt is not fitted, so you can decide to add 1 inch, but for my own shirt I made use of 1.5. So mark 1.5 after imputing your bust measurement. So on the waist, my waist is 28 divided by 4 is 7 inches. Then I added my 1.5 inch for ease, as you can see. Or you can decide to measure whatever it is on your chest line and impute it on your waistline, depending on how free you want your shirt to be. So on the shirt length line, which is going to serve as our hip line, I marked my hips divided by 4 plus 1.5 inches for my ease allowance, as you can see. So I'm just going to go ahead and connect the markings I made, as you can see. So after that, I'm going to come down by half of an inch below the chest line. Let me use my ruler to make it visible so you understand what I'm trying to explain. So on that line where I am pointing, come down by half of an inch, because you don't want the armhole area to be too tight, because it's a shirt. The shirt is supposed to be a bit free. So I'm going to come down by half of an inch. Then I'm going to get the midpoint of my armhole line. Watch the way I'm going to get the midpoint. It's my midpoint, so I'm just going to use my armhole curve to connect that midpoint to the 1/2 inch I came down by. As you can see, connect it with your armhole curve, or you can use your hand, whichever one would be easier for you. Okay, that's going to be a new armhole line. Then on that shirt length line, I'm going to divide what I have there into 2 to get the midpoint of the line. As you can see, just watch closely. That's the midpoint, as you can see. Then where I'm pointing at, I'm going to come up by 2 inches. You can decide to come up by 3 or 4 inches. It all depends on how curvy you want the side seam of your shirt to be. So I'm just using my armhole curve to create my curve. Then after that, I'm going to add 1/2 inch seam allowance from the shoulder slant to the armhole straight down to the shirt length line. So just watch the way I'm going to add up my seam allowance of 0.5 inch. That's a new armhole, so you add 1/2 inch from there. So that's it for our back piece shirt. So I'm just going to fold it neatly and keep it aside and bring my fabric for my front piece. So the fabric unfold is my hips divided by 4 plus 2 inches, then plus 2.5 inches, which is going to serve as my buttonhole and button allowance. 2.5, as you can see. So I'm just going to go ahead, and I made the line there because the tip of the fabric is not straight. Then I'm going to go ahead and mark my 2.5 inches. It's going to serve as my buttonhole and my button allowance. Mark it straight down. Use my ruler to make the markings visible, as you can see. So that's going to serve as our center front. So I am going to mark out a top line of 1 inch for the front piece of my shirt. 1 inch, as you can see. Just watch closely. I'm going to use my ruler to make the markings visible. This is going to be my shoulder line. So I'm going to impute my shirt length, which is 28 inches, all across my fabric. As you can see, use my ruler to make the markings visible. Then mark out my shoulder to waistline, which is 16.75 inch. Then use my ruler to make the markings visible, as you can see. So that's going to be our shoulder to our half length line, my shoulder to my shirt. That's my shoulder to my shirt length line, as you can see. So I'm going to make use of that center front, which is our buttonhole allowance. So I'm just going to impute my shoulder divided by 2 from the center front line, as you can see. Then come down with 1 inch for my shoulder slant. Then I'm going to mark out my chest line. Remember how we got our chest line and the back piece, which is 7.1. Then I'm just going to mark out the shoulder on that chest line point. As you can see, just repeat what you did to the back piece, to the front piece also. Then rule out my chest line. Make sure your ruler is straight. Then after that, I'm going to get my neckline. My neckline for that I used for the back, the neckline which I used for the back was 2.5 because I'm on the slim side. Then for the front, I'm going to use 3 inches for the depth, as you can see. So I'm just going to go ahead and create my box. Use my armhole curve to curve my neckline. As you can see, just draw my neckline out, and after that just connect my shoulder slants with my ruler. As you can see, then I'm going to impute my bust measurement on my chest line. My bust divided by 4, 8.5 plus 1.5 inch for ease width that we used for the back piece. Then on the waistline also, my waist is 28 divided by 4, 7 plus 1.5 for the ease. Then for the shirt length line, I'm going to impute my hips, which is 37 divided by 4, 9.25 plus 1.5 for ease. As you can see, then I'm going to use my ruler to connect my points from the chest line to the waist, from the waist to the shirt length line, which is also serving as my hip line. So after that, I'm going to get the midpoint of what I have on my shirt length line. As you can see, just watch the way I place my tape. That's the midpoint, just the same thing we did to the back piece. Then remember, we used 2 inches where I'm pointing at for the back piece is what you use for the front also. Then I use my armhole curve to connect the 2 points I made, because I want the side seam to be a bit curvy. So after that, I'm going to come down by 0.5 of an inch there, the same thing we did to the back piece. Then I'm going to get the midpoint of my armhole line using my tape. Get the midpoint, just watch the way I'm going to get the midpoint. I'm just going to connect the midpoint to that 1/2 of an inch I came down by from the chest line to get my armhole curve. So I'm just going to mark out 0.5 of an inch seam allowance from the shoulder slant to the armhole line to the side seam and to my shirt length line all around. Just watch. Extend that out, then make my markings visible. Made it visible. That's my 0.5 inch seam allowance. So I'm just going to go ahead and press in that 2.5 inches buttonhole allowance. Just fold it in neatly using that line as a guide. Then use your pressing iron to press it to lay flat. Make sure you give it a good press to make it lay flat, because that is our center front. See how it's laying flat now? You can see the 2.5 inches we pressed in. That is our center line. Just fold it in back neatly. I'm just going to use my scissors to cut through the neckline. Just watch the way I'm going to cut through. Open up. You can see how it's looking now. Just close it up back. So this 0.5 seam allowance, I'm just going to make it visible and explain what I am going to do there. Just watch very closely, please watch very closely. So I am going to come down by 1 inch from that 0.5 inches seam allowance I marked on the shoulder slants. So you place your tape under 0.5 inches and come down by 1 inch on that shoulder slant. As you can see, watch very closely, please. Use my ruler to make the markings visible, as you can see. So that's going to be our new shoulder slant. So as you can see, I've cut out my front piece for the shirt. So I've cut it out, as you can see. So I'm just going to use my office pin to hold that shoulder slant area. Put it in place so it doesn't shift while cutting. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut off that 1 inch I came down by from the shoulder slant. Please watch closely. Cut it off. You keep that aside, keep it properly, please. We're going to make use of it on the back piece. So that's it for our front piece for the shirt. Open it up and see how it's looking like now. Close it up and fold it neatly. Keep it aside and bring back your back piece. So I am going to extend that armhole line up. Just going to extend it line to touch the top line. So I'm trying to make the half of an inch seam allowance around the armhole line visible. Extend that line out, as you can see. So I'm just going to cut out my back piece. Watch where I'm cutting through. Watch closely, please. Cut through the armhole line. That is the half of an inch seam allowance. So remember, we are cutting directly on our fabric, so we have to be very careful. Then cut through the half of an inch I imputed on that shirt length line. Then cut through the side seam, the half of an inch seam allowance, as you can see. I'm going to extend that neckline onto the top line, as you can see. Just making that box visible. Watch closely, please. I'm just going to cut through the neckline of my back piece. Cut it off. Watch where I'm cutting through. So I'm going to bring my front piece and show you something. So remember the cutout from the front piece of the shoulder slants, the cutout of the shoulder slant, as you can see. So where I'm pointing out is the neckline box. Please watch very closely. So I'm just going to make a mark in there. I just did like an X there to indicate that neckline box, to show where I cut it out from. So I'm going to close, just going to neatly fold my front piece and keep it. So I'm just going to make my 0.5 inches seam allowance I added on the shoulder slant of my back piece. I'm just going to make it visible. Make it visible using my ruler. Please watch closely. Remember the mark I made, the X mark I made, that shows that that's the neckline area. So I'm going to place it on that neckline area of the back piece also. Watch closely. Place it on that half of an inch seam allowance. Let me recap again. Remember, we cut the cutouts of the shoulder slant on that neckline area, so you place it back on top of the half of an inch seam allowance on that shoulder slant of the back piece. Then use your ruler to trace out that 1 inch cutout on that shoulder slant onto your top line of the back piece. As you can see, lift up the cutout for the front. We have no need for it since we've already traced it out on our back piece. So that's going to be our new shoulder slant. I'm going to open it up for you to see. Now that's our back piece. So here's our front piece also, as you can see. So I'm just going to pick one piece of our front shirts and mark 2 inches on that buttonhole allowance area from the center front area. Just mark 2 inches. As you can see what I am doing, mark 2 inches. Then use my ruler to make the markings visible. 2 inches is what you're going to mark out. watch what I'm going to do next. So I'm just going to fold in from that buttonhole, fold it onto that 2 inches mark I made, and give it a very good press. Give it a good press. Fold in close to, or you can decide to measure it and fold in 1 inch. You know, when you divide 2 inches by 2 equally, you have 1 inch. So you just fold it on top of that 2 inches line you marked and give it a very good press. Please watch closely. It's very simple and easy. Just watch closely. After that, I'm going to fold it in again. Fold it in again and give it a good press. Fold it in again and give it a good press, as you can see. So here's our back piece. Just going to show you how we are going to join it. So here's my front piece. After ironing that buttonhole area, I'm going to trim off the excess on the around the neckline, because we've already folded what we need. So I'm going to place the right side facing the right side. So you're going to sew with 1/2 inch on that shoulder slant area. You sew with 1/2 inch seam allowance that you added. Same thing to the other side of your front piece, also 1/2 inch on the shoulder slant. Then on that buttonhole area where we ironed, you're going to stitch on it. You're going to top stitch on it, and you sew the side seam and the shirt length line area, the hem area also. So after sewing all that, you can see how it's looking. 1/2 inch on the shoulder slant. You can see that the back is coming onto the front because of that 1 inch we cut out, and I stitch on top of what the 1 inch we ironed on that button area. Then I stitched the side seam with 1/2 inch seam allowance, as you can see, up to the shirt length area. I'm going to go ahead and fold it in with my 1/2 inch seam allowance all around the hem area. So as you can see how neat it's looking after I gave it a very good press. You can see the shoulder slant area. That's going to be the right side of our fabric, which will serve as our buttonhole allowance. That's where we're going to put our shirt collar around the neckline. I'm going to sew in my sleeves also. So you can see how the shirt is looking now. It's looking very neat and beautiful. So you can watch my previous video on how to make a shirt collar. The video is very detailed. So I am going to show you how to mark out your buttonhole. And it's the shirt collar stand. I'm going to mark out 0.75. Then it's your shirt collar stand. Mark out 0.75. That is going to serve as the length of our buttonhole. So mark 3 inches after the 0.75 inch. After that, you mark another 0.75. Then for where our button is going to sit, so in between that 0.75 inch, you lift it up and point out the midpoint onto the other side of your shirt. In my next video, I will show you how I made my buttonhole using my manual sewing machine. So stay tuned for my next video. So that's where our buttons will sit on. So I went ahead to cut out my sleeve. You can watch my video on how to make a sleeve. I wanted mine to be a short sleeve with a turn up at the hem of the sleeve. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.